We all good now, Emma, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. It says there's 7 people watching, so
Okay. And if you're on when you go on the YouTube, can you see that it's like showing what's on the screen and stuff?
give me 1 minute, let me check.
Yeah, no worries, just make sure.
Yeah, Louise, I think that's fine now.
Okay, all right. In that case then, let's get started. So welcome to those that are joining us on YouTube. This is the second installment of the Code Anxiety Club. My name's Louise Capener, and I'm part of the Computational Social Science training team at the UK Data Service. And I'm joined today by my colleague Nadia Kanar, and also joined by Emma Green, who is helping just to facilitate things. Oops. Okay, so just a bit about the interaction first. So we are live streaming to YouTube. And if you do want to like comment on the live chat with any comments and questions, please do so. That's kind of what these sessions are about. Allows you to just like air any sort of questions or comments that you might have on things. And Nadia is going to read out any relevant comments to me and any questions, and I'm going to try and respond to them as quickly as possible. But please do note that there is a delay in the live stream. So if you're wondering why I'm not replying to your question, there's a chance that I probably will reply in the next 30 seconds to it. So bear that in mind. So in terms of our upcoming topics, so in a couple of weeks, we've got understanding file navigation. So we did a little bit about the command line and sort of like how we navigate through our files using that, but we're going to sort of build on these skills in this next session. So we're going to look at some file management commands across different operating systems, and we're going to practice some exercises to build confidence in moving around your system. And then a couple of weeks after that, we'll be mastering file pathways. So we're going to be looking at the difference between absolute and relative pathways. So sort of what's the difference between them. I'll teach you some tips and tricks for finding files quickly, and also, just the best practices for managing file structures in your projects. Just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay. So that's what's coming up. But for today, we're going to be navigating IDEs, so that's integrated development environments, and we're going to be looking at them versus the command line, which we covered in a couple of weeks ago in the last session. And I'm going to introduce you to RStudio and a few other popular IDEs, and then we'll look at sort of the use cases for the command line versus when you'd want to use an IDE. So in terms of the commands that we covered last time, I just thought I'd refresh you here with a few of them. So we covered, CD, which in your command line, that's a current directory. So, you can supply it with arguments, so different directories here, and that'll allow you to jump between your different folders. We use the dir command, so that sort of lists every file in that directory that you're in. So in terms of if you're using Mac, the corresponding command is going to be ls. So that's going to list every single file in that folder. And a few other commands as well. I'm not going to go into detail through all of them. I'm just going to point out the ones that might be a bit different for Mac. So we've got del as well. So that's going to delete a file. And the corresponding command in Mac is rm. So that stands for remove. And from personal experience, I know that you have to be very careful with that because you can end up accidentally deleting files. You don't want to do that. So I just got a little picture here of that's my terminal and Mac, and you can see I've used the cd command to get into my Git work folder, and I've used ls just to list all of the files within that. And there's a little picture of a Linux terminal as well. So let's go over, what a command line is again, and then we'll cover what an IDE is. So I do want to as well refresh you on some different terms that we covered in the session a couple of weeks ago. So what we did is we covered what's the difference, between a shell, a terminal, and your command line, okay? These terms often do get mixed up, so I just want to clarify them again. So in terms of a terminal, this is the window or the app that you open to interact with your system. So it's kind of like the door to your tools. Then we have the shell. So this is the program inside the terminal that interprets the commands that you type. So you can kind of think of it as the brain behind the scenes. And then we've got the command line. So this is the actual interface where you type your commands. And it's part of that terminal shell combo. Now, some people don't like analogies, but I have got an analogy for this. So you can kind of think of it as driving a car, okay? So you imagine you're driving a car, you've got the terminal, which is the car itself, the shell, which is the engine, and the command line is kind of like the steering wheel. So you're going to use that to give directions. Okay, so I hope that made a little bit of sense. Don't worry about it too much. If not, I'm now going to go over what the command line is. So the command line is a text-based interface, and it allows you to type commands that will allow you to interact with your computer. So instead of clicking on icons or menus, you directly give instructions by typing. So in our last session, we covered the difference between a CLI, which is a command line interface, and a GUI, which is your graphical user interface. So in terms of the command line, it's text-based. So you're going to write your commands in plain text. So, you could write, sorry, Nadia, did you, oh, I thought someone unmuted, but I'll just check if there is any questions in the chat, please do just shout them out. But so yeah, it's a text-based interface. So you're going to write your commands in plain text. So there's a command, for instance, mkdir, which stands for make directory. So you might type in make directory by my_folder, okay? And that's going to create a folder. Or you might use the Python command followed by a certain Python script, and that's going to run a program. So another thing to note about the command line is that it's very fast and it's very lightweight. So the command line uses very few system resources and is super fast because it doesn't have that graphical baggage, right? So you're not loading up drop downs and menus, and it's not pretty shiny colors. It's very sort of skeletal and bare bones. So you can perform tasks quite quickly once you do know the commands. So it can be really handy for automation and scripting. So if you want to, for instance, process hundreds of files, let's say we've got a folder and it's full of 100 text files, okay, and they're called file1.txt, file2.txt, all the way up to 100. Well, perhaps we might want to separate the file and the number by a little underscore. Well, we could do that really quickly by using a few commands like a for loop and such, and we can rename all those files just through the command line. So it is quite good for tasks like that. So what about an IDE? What's that then? Well, it's like a workspace that's tailored for writing, testing, and managing code. So it combines all the tools that you're going to need in one place. So as I've said, it's a GUI. So unlike the text-only command line, an IDE uses a graphical interface. So there's going to be buttons, menus, and windows, and that's going to make it all easier to navigate. And it also includes some really, really good tools when you're writing code, such as debugging tools and sort of syntax highlighting, which will help you get to grips with sort of like the different classes and sort of like different functions and naming conventions, stuff like that. And debugging is great because it can let you do things like pause your program, you can inspect what's happening, and you can sort of fix bugs step by step. Another thing that the integrated development environment is really good for is for working on large projects with sort of complex workflows. So if you're working on a sort of bigger project with quite a few files, an IDE is great because it allows you to organize everything kind of visually, and it lets you sort of quickly jump between different parts of your code. And it also helps you manage sort of dependencies and version control, which those words might not make any sense right now, but that's fine. I will cover them a little bit later on in the slides. So yeah, let's just sum that up then. So your command line and your IDE are going to differ based on your needs. So if you want to, navigate through some files, maybe launch some software, or you want something that's fast and lightweight, then the command line is great. But if you're writing code and you want to debug it, and especially if you're learning how to code, you're going to want to use an IDE. You don't want to be really running your code through the command line because it has, because an IDE has all these extra features. They're really great, and you'll want to sort of leverage them. So yeah, now let's talk about some popular IDEs and what they are best suited for. So different IDEs are going to be tailored to specific programming languages or different workflows. So choosing the right one is going to make your work much easier. So R users, anyone who's looking to start programming in R, you're uniquely blessed because you don't really have to shop around for the perfect IDE because you already have one in RStudio. So it's an IDE that's specifically designed for working with R. So people often will just need to install two things, which is RStudio and R itself, and then bam, you're pretty much good to go. So R is a language that's commonly used for statistical analysis and data visualization. So it's going to make tasks like RStudio is going to make tasks like running R scripts and creating plots and managing data sets much more efficient. And I'm going to demonstrate it for you in a second as well. But I'll just cover a few others. So there's also PyCharm, which is a powerful IDE for Python development. So it has a ton of really useful features, debugging tools, it's got code suggestions, and it integrates with version control systems. So what's a version control system? Well, we are going to be covering it in a future session, but you might come across something called Git, and also the sort of GUI for that, which is GitHub. So Git basically allows you to share your code, and it's version control sort of in a similar way. If anyone uses stuff like SharePoint, it will basically you'll keep a record of the code changes that you made by adding these little tags to it called commits, where you can put a message such as added extra line in XYZ function. Okay, so it's version control, and a lot of IDEs are going to be integrated with it. So that's another benefit of using an IDE. Then you've got Visual Studio Code, which I'm going to demonstrate as well. So this is a really lightweight and highly customizable IDE. So it supports many programming languages for extensions, and it makes it a really versatile choice for projects that involve sort of multiple languages or technologies. And finally, we have Jupyter Notebooks, which is one I often use for coding in Python. It's really popular when it comes to data science and also machine learning. So it allows you to write code and see the results. And you can also add really nice explanatory text or visuals in Markdown, which is quite good. So you can kind of present like really nice, neat code that people can follow quite easily. So if you ever visit our UKDS GitHub, which is UK Data Service Open, you'll notice that a lot of our interactive coding notebooks will be Jupyter notebooks because they have these like separate code cells. So it's really easy to kind of like execute things and follow it along. And there's like explanatory text and stuff. So it is a really useful one. But the main thing is that each of these has, their own unique strengths. So your choice is going to depend on the kind of work that you're doing. So, if you're analyzing data in R, then RStudio is going to be ideal, whereas Python developers might want to take a look at PyCharm or Visual Studio Code or Jupyter Notebooks. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and then I'm going to share my screen to show you RStudio first, and then we'll have a little look at Visual Studio Code. So give me a second. So our studio. Okay. So I'm just loading up our studio now. Okay. So you can see we've got, let's just click off that. We've got 4 different panels here. Okay. So, let me see if I can remember what each panel is. So I think this is your source panel, and this is where you write your coding script. So you can see, don't worry too much about this at the minute. I will run it just to show you a little example, but I've just got a very simple bit of code here. And you can see I've named my file example.r. Then we have our environment panel here and our history. So let's just clean this actually, because I think that's from something different. So you'll see when I run this, my environment panel will become populated by my variables. So this helps you keep track of sort of the variables you're creating. It's also a good place to view your data set as well. So some of you might want to, if you're working with a data set that's been sort of imported by Excel or it's a CSV file, you can have a look at it here. It'll track your history as well. So you can see it's got all of the things that I've previously been running in different R sessions there. And you can see, like I said, a lot of these IDEs are going to be integrated with Git. So don't worry about too much now what the ins and outs of it, but just know that it's it's sort of accessible through this IDE. And down here, we've got our console. So this is where the code actually runs. So I'll show you this bit of code running. We can see that it'll pop up here. For now, it's just telling us a little bit about the R version that we're using. So they all have kind of weird names and stuff. So this one's called Puppy Cup for some reason, and it's R version 4.40. And here we've got sort of another panel where we have our files. So we can see here, I'm just going to change to the relevant. So you can see here in my documents folder. So what I can do here is I can set my directory and I can work with files within this folder. If I created any plots, they're going to come up in this panel here. So if I create a really nice graph and I want to view it in a nice little window, I can do so here. I can manage my packages. So packages are just, sort of like pre-written bits of code that come with really nice functions. So for instance, you might get maths packages, like I think NumPy, for instance, is a Python package that has loads of functions for calculations and like mathematical stuff. So you can sort of import your packages here by sort of ticking them, and it'll like make sure that you have those functions accessible. You've got your help. Can't remember what view is for really. Just basically have a lot of stuff. So what I'll do now is I'll just see what time we're on. So we've got 10 minutes left. So I'll just go through this quickly. So really simple bit of code here, but if you still, don't worry if you don't quite grasp it yet, because we haven't actually gone through sort of like the intro bits of coding yet. But basically what I've got here is a variable called X. And I'm using this assignment operator. So in R, we use this little arrow followed by a dash. And I'm just assigning that variable X the value 2. So I could go ahead and, can I run this line? Yep, so you can see there, I've run it. So you can see it's come up in the console. Now I've got another variable that I called Y, and it's just going to be X raised to the power of 2. Okay, so I can run that. And you see it's popping up here in my environment panel. Okay, so you see I've got my X and Y, and I've got the sort of numbers that they represent. So it's a really good way to keep track of, what you're working with. And very simply just going to do X plus Y. So, oops. Let's see, yeah. Oh, every time I try and click on the run button, the Zoom toolbar pops over it. So let's just see. Yeah, okay. Let's go over it. Okay, let's run that. So you can see we've got an output here as well. So your output is going to show up here as well. the output is 6. So that's just a really, really simple introduction to RStudio. So what you're going to need to do if you want to start working with RStudio yourself is just go to the RStudio website and make sure you install it, make sure you install R, and you're pretty much set up and ready to go. So that's the first IDE for those who are looking to sort of start it get started programming in R. What we'll do now is we'll have a look at Visual Studio Code. Okay. Should share on screen. Okay, so you can see when you open Visual Studio Code, you get this Get Started panel. Okay, so it sort of gives you some prompts, tells you some like recent files that you've opened. It's got a few walkthroughs that you might want to go through, but I'm just going to go to my File Explorer, which is another way I can open a file. I'm going to choose my relevant file, which is I'm just going to open a very simple Python script. I say very simple actually, but this won't be so simple for those of you that obviously don't know how to code yet. So yeah, I should probably clarify that. I'm not really showing this to sort of get into what the code's doing. I'm showing you this code to demonstrate the debugging features that Visual Studio Code comes with. So don't worry too much about the code yet. I just want to show you what happens when we kind of run it. So you can see here, we can shut down this tab. We can move that one all the way over to the left. Now you see we've got these different sort of icons along the side, okay? So we have run and debug. We've got source control. Don't worry about that. It's more to do with, I think that's to do with sort of version control and Git. So don't worry about that too much. We've got our extensions. So we can install a number of things here. There's a load of weird things you can install. But yeah, it's taken a little bit of a while to load. So let's just forget that. But firstly, let's go ahead and try and run this code. So I'm going to do Command F5.
Welcome to VoiceOver.
No, that's not what I want to do. The wrong thing I clicked. I wonder if there's. I've just forgot the shortcut to run my code. Let's just see if this works. Give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna just. Okay. Let me just work this out. I don't often use a Visual Studio Code, which is why now stopped what I'm doing. Okay. Why? Okay. Tell you what, let's just leave that for now, and I'll go on to my last slide. I was just running it before, and you know what? It'll be something really simple, but I'll have to see if I can maybe revisit that, and then we can cover it maybe at the start of the next session. But yeah, it'll be something really simple that I'm not doing, but I normally use Jupyter notebooks. But anyway, let's go back to the slides and sort of wrap up. Okay. So, what are the use cases? When do you want to use each of these? Well, in terms of the command line, it's going to be really good for quick file and system management. So the command line allows you to navigate your computer file system. You can create folders and move files much faster than using a graphical interface. For example, that command I mentioned earlier, mkdir make directory, followed by the name of a folder you want to create. It's going to instantly create a folder. So, very, very fast. You're going to want to use it if you want to automate repetitive tasks. So you can, like I said before, can use sort of like different commands sort of combined together to automate like a task like renaming 100 files in a folder. And it's going to be good if you want to run a script very efficiently and quick. So and quickly. So the command line is lightweight. It doesn't require opening additional software, so you can just type in Python followed by a script name to run a script, which makes it faster and more resource efficient. But if you are writing code, I would suggest that's when you want to use an IDE. So it's going to help you write that code faster and with fewer mistakes. It's going to highlight errors for you, suggest fixes, and it even allows you to debug step by step by pausing your code and inspecting what's happening. And that's what I wanted to show you a bit of before, but I'm going to have to sort of get my head around Visual Studio Code again before I'm able to do that. And you're going to want to use an IDE if you're working on a large project. So these IDEs are designed to handle complex projects with multiple different files. They're going to provide tools so you can, jump quickly between files and understand dependencies and manage everything visually. So yeah, dependencies then. So what do I really mean by this? And what do we mean by managing dependencies and libraries? Well, IDEs simplify the process of installing and managing libraries your project depends on. So for instance, what they can do is they can automatically detect missing libraries and prompt you to install them with one click. So like I've said before, libraries are those like NumPy, for instance, in Python. That's a library that contains a bunch of pre-written functions that you can use to do sort of like a lot of mathematical sort of like calculations and stuff. So, maybe you wanted to square a number. It's a very, very simple one, but maybe you want to do that. There's probably a function for that in NumPy, or maybe you wanted to scale your sort of values on your y-axis. You can do that with NumPy very easily. So that's why packages are important. But occasionally when you install different packages, they're going to have different dependencies. Okay, so packages get updated a lot. So it might be that you get an error using one package because it says it requires version 5.6 of NumPy and you only have version 5.3. So then you're going to want to upgrade it and stuff. So that's what I mean by managing dependencies and libraries. And we will talk in the future, I'm sure, about different software that you can use to help you manage dependencies like Anaconda, for instance. Now, what we'll do is I'll just see if there's any comments in the chat. Is there any comments in the chat, Nadia? Or?
Hey Louise, no, nothing's been posted.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes makes my job a little bit easier then. So we are on 2 o'clock now. So I will just wrap up and sort of like spotlight my email if anyone wants to anyone has any questions. maybe you didn't want to put it in the chat, but you might want to just like ask me over email. That's perfectly fine. Really don't mind answering any questions or sort of like queries that you have. Or you could also contact me on Twitter. So I've got my Twitter handle there, or X, I suppose now. And you've also got our data service, UK data service Twitter as well, where you can follow that to get sort of like updates on our events and stuff, and all that good stuff. But we are on like a minute past now, so I think that's probably where we'll wrap up. And yeah, just want to thank everyone for coming. And that's that, I guess.